This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to answer the question, is Elon Musk buying Bitcoin? I also want to talk about Ray Dalio turning positive on Bitcoin, and also at the end of the video, be sure you stay tuned because I'm going to talk about why I think something similar to GameStop could happen to Bitcoin, really the mother of all short squeezes. Now, to turn to Elon Musk first, a lot of people don't know the history, but the guys over at PayPal, whom I knew very well, one of their goals was actually to create a new world currency. They had these logos made up, and even we had Luke Nosek come out a couple years ago and mentioned, can really confirm this publicly, saying we had a mission at PayPal, which was to create a new financial system, a new world currency, and we failed. And so it makes perfect sense that a lot of these PayPal guys, the so-called PayPal mafia, know a lot about Bitcoin, or that it would fit in with their sort of libertarian biases or their knowledge of currencies. We got some indications a couple months ago in December that Elon Musk was quote unquote being tempted by Bitcoin, me trying to live a normal, productive life. And now, just I believe yesterday or the night before, Elon Musk added Bitcoin, the emoji and the hashtag, to his Twitter bio. This is really amazing if you think about it, because this is the richest guy in the world. He has nothing in his bio except nothing about SpaceX, nothing about Tesla, nothing about the Boring Company or flamethrowers or going to Mars or anything like that. He has the Bitcoin logo. Very similar to, well, we'll talk about the other billionaires that have it in their logo. He tweeted also yesterday, in retrospect, it was inevitable, I suppose, that he would come around and embrace Bitcoin once he did a deep dive on it. In honor of this, someone embedded in the 668,198th block of Bitcoin, someone embedded that tweet. You can add to what's called the Coinbase data. In retrospect, it was inevitable, Elon Musk. So this quote is now a permanent part of the Bitcoin blockchain from now until the end of time, probably. Someone pointed out to me, one of my subscribers, that you should also keep an eye on Grimes's Twitter feed. She wrote a little song here, or a poem about Bitcoin. It's not as popular right now, but Bitcoin's also a cash cow. Even though she's fallen some, I still grew my initial sum. This really does suggest that both Grimes, obviously Grimes is basically admitting here or suggesting here that she owns Bitcoin. It suggests that also that Musk has been buying Bitcoin. If you were a billionaire and you were about to tell people that you liked Bitcoin, would you buy it first and then tell people? Or would you tell people you like Bitcoin, watch it run up, and then buy it? This is not a market that is subject to securities manipulation laws. Bitcoin is a completely free market. It trades, and so you can sort of front run yourself. If you were Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or someone like that, you could buy Bitcoin and then tweet about it. There'd be no securities violation there at all. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. In fact, I'm fairly certain that Musk has been buying Bitcoin. If you've been selling into this dip, there's a good chance that Musk has been buying some of your Bitcoin, or the weak hands' Bitcoin. If you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, I'd encourage you to also hit that subscribe and like button right now. This raises the larger question about whether Musk will put Bitcoin on the Tesla balance sheet, use his excess cash to buy Bitcoin in a similar way to what Michael Saylor did over at MicroStrategy. I think it's fairly unlikely. He might put a token amount, 1 or 2 or 5%. Currently, the Tesla balance sheet has about $14.5 billion in cash and an roughly equal amount of debt. So the company's not levered at all. Has a very high stock price, obviously. A lot of forward future growth has been already baked into it. I would suggest that for MicroStrategy, which is purely a software company, a fairly slowly growing one at this point, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. They have this free cash flow. They don't have a lot of reinvestment costs. And so it makes sense for them to plow it into Bitcoin. Whereas Elon Musk's companies, they're not pure software companies. They have very high capital expenditures. They need to actually build factories, whether you're building them for cars or for rockets. And so he has real capital costs in these companies. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense. Well, if I were Musk, actually, I would issue some shares here at these very high valuations, take the cash and maybe put some of that into Bitcoin. But it doesn't make sense for Tesla to put the same percentage of their balance sheet into Bitcoin as a really capital light company, software company like MicroStrategy. That being said, one shouldn't underestimate the psychological impact of someone like Musk, not just adding Bitcoin to his bio, but buying a little bit. He could buy a couple $100 million worth and put it on Tesla's balance sheet. That would certainly be responsible. And this would really have a snowball effect. This is the game theory of Bitcoin. The earlier you buy it, the earlier you get ahead of everyone. You front run everyone, the better position you're in. The latecomers, they have to get in paying very high prices. And Bitcoin is a very scarce asset, as we know. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Just wanted to mention the other major Twitter people who have Bitcoin as their sole bio. Obviously, Jack Dorsey has had it like that for about a year or so. Winklevoss twins, other billionaires as well, worked early on Facebook. Both of them have it. And when you're seeing this, you have to ask yourself, if you're one of those people who still thinks Bitcoin is stupid, who thinks it's going to be banned by the government, who thinks it's a bad investment, look around at these billionaires who have it in their Twitter bio. Michael Saylor, of course, has it there as well. He's the one who's been buying loads of Bitcoin with every spare bit of cash he can get his hands on. And I was surprised to see this as well. One of my kids pointed it out. They're big fans of Mr. Beast, that he also has Bitcoin. This is how Bitcoin spreads. Bitcoin is the real virus of 2020 and 2021. It's the mind virus. It spreads because once you start going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and thinking about it, thinking what money is, you can't but help wanting to buy some. This was what happened to Musk. He must have finally had some free time to really sit back and have some quiet time to think about money and Bitcoin. And as a result, there are people like Musk, and then YouTubers, popular celebrities, people like Mr. Beast, and various rappers we've talked about, football players like Russell Okung. When these people buy Bitcoin, it has a snowball effect because people who admire them or look up to them not only get their first exposure to Bitcoin, but also begin to probably buy some themselves. Wanted to finish up with another billionaire who's been very anti-Bitcoin for many years, but seems to be coming around. This is, of course, the great Ray Dalio. Just published a paper on LinkedIn calling Bitcoin one hell of an invention and comparing it to a gold-like asset. He still has some objections. He's still working through it. He thinks you could just create your own another cryptocurrency that would provide a lot of competition. He doesn't quite understand the network effects yet. But this is a huge step, and it does look like he is now considering it for some of his funds, which is huge. Once he invests in it as well and talks positively about it, just like Mr. Beast or Elon Musk, there's a positive snowball effect. And it's now reached the point on Wall Street. A couple of years ago, if you bought Bitcoin and it went down, you could certainly lose your job. Now it's a much safer investment from a career risk perspective. If you're buying something that Paul Tudor Jones, that Ray Dalio, that Elon Musk are buying, it's not doesn't carry the same career risk. So this is really huge, and this is one way that Bitcoin ends up winning. Previous very vocal skeptics like Ray Dalio eventually come around, and some of the more old guard finance people, they're going to be the last to come around. People like Munger and Buffett, unfortunately, probably won't live long enough to ever come around. More news in terms of demand for Bitcoin. BlockFi has just registered a Bitcoin trust with the SEC, so we have all these on-ramps forming. We probably will have a Bitcoin ETF in the next 6 to 18 months as well, and we really shouldn't underestimate the potential this has to cause a massive short squeeze in Bitcoin, similar to what we saw in GameStop. take a look at the GameStop chart again, take a look at AMC, and think about what could happen to Bitcoin if something similar occurs. I think what we will see in the coming months or years is really the mother of all short squeezes. Now, not a lot of people are actually literally short Bitcoin. There are a lot of hedge funds that have short futures positions. These are more hedge funds that are doing a cash and carry trade where they buy Bitcoin and sell futures against it to capture the basis. So there's not this same sort of structural short presence, but you have something very similar to GameStop where you have Bitcoin has a very small float simply because many of the coins have been lost and many of the coins are in deep storage. You have this situation where hodlers like myself will literally not sell at any price. And this is really what we saw with GameStop. Very small float, obviously huge short interest as a percentage of the float and shares outstanding. But it's really a supply and demand thing. Small float, small supply, plus huge demand. Now, the thing about GameStop, they can always issue more shares. Their shares can be halted by the SEC. You can have all this funny business. Robinhood can tell you that you can't trade it, for example. Bitcoin's very different. Nothing can stop it from trading. It trades on exchanges all over the world. Even if it were temporarily banned, the trading of it in the U.S., which almost certainly won't happen. You've got people like Musk and Dalio on board now. The government exists for billionaires, and they're not going to ban something that billionaires like. So just like GME, just like GameStop, Bitcoin has a very small float, and the actual circulating float is probably more like just 5 to 7 million coins. Again, many of them have been lost, and many are in cold storage and are no longer available. Unlike GME, unlike stocks, the government cannot stop it from trading. Maybe the U.S. government can try to stop it from trading for a short period of time. I don't think they would do this. This would have a devastating effect on leveraged hedge funds, on quant funds, etc. So it seems very unlikely. But even if they did, this Bitcoin would still continue to trade all over the world on exchanges all over the world. It's not like a listed stock that can only trade on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. Very much like GME, people are structurally short. They're not literally short, but they're structurally short Bitcoin. Something like 97-98% of the world's population doesn't own any Bitcoin. GME, I applaud what Wall Street Bets did, but GME is fundamentally a fairly worthless company. Maybe it's worth $20 a share or $25 a share, something like that. But it really is a dead retail company. They may be able to move a lot of the business online, etc. The Chewy co-founder obviously has some ideas. It's clearly not worth in the hundreds per share. So GME is really, I mean, this was part of the joke of Wall Street Bets. Take a company that's been basically shut down and is headed toward bankruptcy. Take a company, even Redditors, they don't go to GameStop to buy their video games. They download them or stream them. So GME is a very backwards-facing company. Maybe there'll be some sort of minor turnaround, but it's not. Bitcoin is a forward-facing investment. It's the new future of money as a store of value. As Ray Dalio does mention here, talking about gold alternatives in a world that requires hedges against currency devaluation. And so even though we don't have an actual huge structural literal short against Bitcoin, what we have is a very small float that cannot be increased by new share issuance, as can happen with GME. And it's a very small float that's meeting very huge demand. Ray Dalio, if he puts a little bit in his funds, and people who follow him put a little bit in their funds, and Musk puts a little bit on the Tesla balance sheet, and then all the FANG stocks begin to put it on their balance sheet. We have high net worth individuals, we have corporations, as we've said, pensions, endowments, and actual governments and central banks will all need at some point to own some Bitcoin. The more people buy it, the more inevitable it becomes. And so I think Musk here is not just talking about his own conversion to Bitcoin, but he's also talking about how inevitable Bitcoin is. It's code that you cannot stop from running. It's a decentralized peer-to-peer ledger. No one can stop it, and it's gotten so big now that it truly cannot be stopped. And so Bitcoin taking over the world's money really is an inevitable outcome at this point. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.